Now, welcome to a special edition of The Big Story. We are discussing the latest developments in Malaysia. I'm Dylan Ang, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. This just in, Malaysia's Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad has handed his resignation to Malaysia's King. Now, joining me to shed more light on this situation is Malaysia Bureau Chief Shannon Teoh. Shannon?
Hi, Dylan.
Now, Shannon, this comes after a tumultuous weekend. Now, we are hearing that Dr. Mahathir has resigned. What happens from here?
Well, the resignation letter has been sent to the King. We have no idea what the King has decided yet. There's no official statement coming out of the palace. But basically, one of two things can happen. A new government can be formed if there is support from the MPs, or the King could call for a snap election. Now, we understand last night, Mahathir already had enough numbers to form a new government, a coalition of different members instead of the existing Pakatan Harapan. Why he's taken this decision? Well, we have some sources telling us that, well, if he has to form a new government, then he's going to do it properly. He's going to resign as Pakatan Harapan Prime Minister and become a Prime Minister or whatever is this new alliance. Of course, there's word coming from another camp saying that Mahathir has just decided to exit stage and let the rest of the politicians figure out what to do from here.
But Shannon, could the King actually reject Dr. Mahathir's resignation?
He effectively, even if technically maybe he can't, he effectively could reject the resignations. By all accounts, the Pakatan Harapan government has now fallen. Just as the resignation letter was reaching the palace, Bersatu, which is Mahathir's party, announced that they are leaving Pakatan Harapan. And Anwar Ibrahim's deputy, Azmin Ali, has left the party along with 10 other MPs. This means Pakatan Harapan no longer commands a simple majority in parliament. So the government has effectively fallen. It doesn't really matter whether the King accepts Mahathir's resignation or not. There is no Pakatan Harapan government. So we are waiting to see whether there will be a new government or we are going to head into another elections.
Now, let's move away a little bit from Dr. Mahathir's resignation. We understand that Mr. Anwar is set to have an audience with the King in a while. In fact, it may be already going on as we speak. Now, why is the Agong or the King central to this?
Well, constitutionally speaking, he is the head of state. He is like the president of Singapore. And he has to decide in his judgment if someone commands the confidence of Parliament, which has 222 MPs. If someone has 112 MPs, then you can go ahead and govern. And he has to decide whether there is a clear and stable majority, or the option is always you have to go to an election if that's not clear.
Could you elaborate a little bit more? What resolution can we expect from this meeting?
Well, Anwar spoke to reporters after meeting Mahathir this morning, along with several other Pakatan Harapan leaders. And he seemed to come out of it rather positively. He said it was a good meeting, and everyone, including Mahathir, is committed to the reform agenda. Now, it's not clear what he means, but if you read between the lines, it nearly implies that maybe Pakatan Harapan is not going to exist as an entity anymore, but Anwar still keen to be part of whatever is this new entity, keen to be part of this new government, and push forward what he calls a reform agenda. This transition agreement between Mahathir and Anwar, where he's supposed to hand over power before the next election, that might be out the window, but maybe Anwar's still not out of the picture yet.
Now, Shannon, just a final question. Prior to winning the general election in May 2018, of course, Pakatan Harapan had agreed that Dr. Mahathir would be Prime Minister for 2 years before he would pass on the baton to Mr. Anwar. Are you surprised by any of this, that Dr. Mahathir would go back on his promise to transfer the premiership over to Mr. Anwar?
Well, firstly, this 2-year timeline, it was never set in stone. It was never in black and white. Depending on who you speak to, some people say it's a gentleman's agreement. It was supposed to be 24 months. So others say, nope, there's no such thing. It was never decided when. We were just looking for a suitable time for it to happen. Now, that Mahathir is backing out the promise, or however you might want to angle what is happening now, it's not surprising at all. I mean, the two of them were uneasy allies to begin with. They had fought tooth and nail for 2 decades before coming together as partners again, right? That largely people believe that Mahathir doesn't actually trust Anwar, but he would have handed over power if he had no choice. But clearly, from what's happening now, there are other options at hand, and he's playing out those cards. Now, whether it finally goes his way, whether Mahathir gets to stay for the full term or he gets to choose a different successor at the end of it, we're still pretty early in the game right now.
Yeah, yeah.
I think he hasn't spoken out. He hasn't said anything as yet. The entire intrigue is now maybe about 36 hours old. No one's actually expecting everything to be very conclusive by the end of the day. There's still the state governments to resolve. There's different cabinet positions. It could be very messy for several days, and it will keep the Malaysian Bureau here very busy.
Well, thank you so much, Shannon, for your insight and the updates. As of course, that was Shannon Teoh, Malaysia Bureau Chief for the Straits Times. And that's the latest on what's happening in Malaysia. Sources told the Straits Times that Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad has resigned. And we'll have more with Shannon on the big story later at 5:30 p.m. I'm Dylan Ang. Thanks for watching.